is the start of media labeled number 1 of the video recorded deposition of Dr. Stanley Plotkin in the matter of Lori Matheson, formerly known as Lori Ann Schmidt, versus Michael Schmidt, filed in the state of Michigan, the Circuit Court for the County of Oakland Family Division. This deposition is being held at 5833 Lower York Road in New Hope, Pennsylvania on January 11th, 2018. My name is Tom Liebman, and I'm the legal video specialist for TSG Reporting Incorporated, headquartered at 747 3rd Avenue in New York City. The court reporter is Maureen Broderick in association with TSG Reporting. Counsel, please introduce yourselves for the record.
Aaron Siri, co-counsel on behalf of plaintiff.
Amy Ruby, co-counsel on behalf of plaintiff.
Laura Nusma, counsel for defendant Michael Schmidt.
The court reporter will now swear in the witness.
Raise your right hand, please, sir. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Good morning, Dr. Plotkin.
Can we just make a record that it's under this court? I would just like to clarify that this is being recorded by a video deposition pursuant to MCR 2.315.
Good morning. Can you please state your full name for the record?
Stanley A. Plotkin.
Okay. Dr. Plotkin, have you been deposed before?
Oh, a long time ago, many years ago.
Okay, and what matter was that?
Oh, that had to do with an abortion done because of congenital rubella.
What year approximately?
In the 1960s.
And what was your testimony about?
My testimony was about the abnormalities that occur in infants of women born, that is, infants of women who have rubella during pregnancy, and whose fetuses are frequently affected with considerable congenital abnormalities.
From rubella?
From rubella.
Did that involve a vaccine?
At the time, I was developing a vaccine against rubella, yes.
Okay. Have you been deposed in any other case?
Not that I can recall, no.
Okay. Have you ever been an expert witness in any lawsuit other than this one?
Again, not for many years. I believe I did a couple of those cases in the 60s, but I have avoided depositions since then.
Okay. Why is that?
Because I consider that they seldom bring out all the facts, but I'm willing to help in this case.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go over a few rules with you for this deposition. The court reporter has placed you under oath. Same as a court of law. You're testifying under penalty of perjury. The court reporter is making a record and will take down the questions that I ask and the answers that you provide. If you don't understand a question, let me know before answering. Okay. The court reporter can't take down nods. That's another rule. So if you, anytime you want to vocalize, please wait till I complete asking a given question, even if you think you know the answer, so that we have a complete record, please. Don't speculate. If you don't know the answer, then so state. But you should provide your best recollection, even if it's vague or partial. Okay?
Yes.
Are you taking any medications or are under the influence of any substance that might affect your ability to testify today?
I don't think so, no.
Is that no?
No.
Okay. Did you discuss this deposition with anyone?
Actually, no. I've had some conversations with Laura Niesma, but not about the substance of my testimony.
Before today, did you have any discussions with anyone related to this deposition?
No, actually, I know very little about the issue here. I understand that there's a disagreement between parents, but that's all I really know.
And you haven't discussed this lawsuit with anyone apart from opposing counsel?
No.
How did you first learn about this lawsuit?
It was from a lady by the name of Karen Ernst, who was the head of an organization called Voices for Vaccines, which is a group of lay people who are favorable to vaccination. And she had heard from the father, I believe, who was looking for experts to testify on his behalf.
So you discussed this lawsuit with her?
Not really discussed the lawsuit. She referred me to the father, and I sent an email saying that I would be willing to testify. I have not talked to the father. I've never met the father. So everything has happened secondhand, so to speak.
And it was Karen Ernst who asked you to be an expert in this case?
She asked me if I would be willing, yes.
And how many discussions have you had with her?
No discussions.
About this case?
About this case, I've simply had an email exchange asking me to do it.
Okay. I'm going to request a copy of that email chain. Okay, Dr. Plotkin?
If I can find it, I'll be glad to send it to you.
Thank you. So before today, other than speaking with opposing counsel and an email communication with Karen Ernst, you have not discussed this lawsuit, this deposition, or the role that you'd be playing here today with anybody else. Is that right?
I've had a email exchange with Paul Offit, Dr. Paul Offit, who is actually a former student of mine.
Mm-hmm. And who's Dr. Offit?
Dr. Offit is a pediatrician at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia.
Okay. And what did you discuss with Dr. Offit?
I discussed with him the issues or the possible issues about refusal to vaccinate.
Okay. And what was the substance of those discussions?
The substance basically concerned what arguments are often used to oppose vaccination.
And what are those arguments?
The arguments generally are that vaccines can cause reactions and that the reactions are worse than the disease.
And what did Dr. Offit have to say about that?
Well, he pointed out, of course, and he's the author of a chapter in my vaccines book, that the opposite is true, that the disease is worse than the reactions to the vaccines.
Do you have peer-reviewed science to support that statement?
Do I have what?
Peer-reviewed science to support that
Yes,
statement?
of course.
And would you be willing to provide that science?
Well, the science is in the chapter in my textbook, but there are innumerable references, some of which I have, but I can certainly provide you with a list of references in the chapter.
Great. Have you reviewed any documents to prepare for this deposition?
You know, I've looked at the web. I don't usually do that, but I've looked at the web, some of the anti-vaccination websites.
And which of those sites did you look at?
Oh gosh, I can't give you the names. I've just sort of scanned through a number of them.
Do you remember the names of any of them?
Let's see.
And Dr. Plotkin, just to be clear, if you don't remember something, just say you don't remember and you can move on from there.
Yeah, well, here's one called Vax Truth. Everything you ever needed to know about medical exemptions to vaccination but didn't know to ask. There were a couple of others that I looked at, many of which were appalling.
And why do you believe they're appalling?
Because they're ignorant of the facts, exaggerations, half-truths, or even misconceptions.
Vac Truth, is that a website that catalogs personal stories of families who believe their child was injured by vaccines?
You know, I did not, what shall I say, read these word for word. I imagine that that's the case, but I couldn't tell you specifically about which website says what.
Mm-hmm. But you found Vac Truth appalling?
Yes.
Okay. Other than reviewing what you refer to as anti-vaxxer websites, did you review any other documents to prepare for this deposition?
Yes, I looked at a number of vaccine safety studies, which again are referenced in the vaccine safety chapter.
Mm-hmm. And apart from that, anything else?
No.
Okay. Have you been provided any documents related to this lawsuit?
To whom?
Have you, Dr. Plotkin, been provided any documents relating to this lawsuit
No,
specifically?
I have not.
Okay. Have you reviewed any medical records related to this case?
Medical records? No.
Okay. Have you done anything other than what we've already discussed to prepare for this deposition today?
No, basically no.
Okay. Have you discussed the child at issue in this case?
No.
Okay. So you don't know anything specific about the child at issue in this case, correct?
I do not.
And you don't know anything about her medical history, correct?
Correct.
And you don't know anything about her family's medical history, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Have you been on any trips in the last year?
Many.
Where to?
Gosh. Several trips to Europe, to France, to Germany. Let's see. Have I been to Asia in the last year? Yes, I've been to Japan. Basically, I mean, of course, many trips in the United States. England,
How many
at
times?
least a dozen trips.
At least a dozen. How many times were you in France in the last year?
Oh gosh, twice I think.
Okay. Germany,
Once,
England.
once,
Okay. These were all separate trips
yes.
in which you got on a plane from the United
Yes.
States, flew there, flew back. Okay. Japan, how many times?
Once.
How many times to other countries outside of the U.S.?
Oh, gosh. I've probably had about a dozen trips
Dozen
altogether.
Okay.
If I had known you were interested, I would have brought my calendar.
How about trips in the United States that required you to get on a plane? How many of those would you say in the last year?
Mainly to California, a lot of trips to Washington, Boston.
California, Washington, same city in California each time or different?
No, San Francisco, San Diego.
Okay. What were the purpose of most of these trips?
Attend meetings, scientific meetings.
Were any of them related to companies developing vaccines?
Oh, yes.
Would you say most of them were?
Most of them. Probably about half of them.
Do you have any trips planned for 2018?
Yes.
Okay, where to?
I'll be going to India next month. However, I'm trying to cut down on foreign trips, so at the moment, I'll be going to Germany in June. Aside from that, I'll be going to France in May. I think that's all I can recall at the moment.
What's your trip to France for?
I'll be teaching in an advanced vaccinology course in Annecy.
Where, I'm sorry?
Annecy,
What's that, I'm sorry?
Annecy. It's a town in France.
Okay. And who's sponsoring this course?
Well, it's sponsored by the University of Geneva and the Gates Foundation.
Anybody else?
No, basically those are the funders.
Okay. And your trip to Germany, what's that for, Doc?
I'll be going to visit a biotechnology company that is trying to develop vaccines based on RNA.
Okay. Do you have a position or affiliation with that company?
I'm simply on their scientific board.
Okay. And your trip to India, the purpose of that one?
To discuss vaccination against chikungunya virus, which is epidemic in India and in South America.
And who are those discussions with?
Well, it's under the aegis of an organization called CEPI, which is a coalition to develop vaccines against epidemic diseases. Okay. So it's an organization that's received funding from various governments to meet the challenges of epidemic diseases like Ebola and chikungunya, et cetera.
This trip also include meeting with vaccine developers?
Well, they will be present at the meeting. They will come and present the results of their efforts to develop a vaccine against chikungunya.
Any trips planned in the United States for 2018?
I wish I had known to bring my calendar. I have no trips planned this month, or actually next month, but I will be going to some NIH-sponsored meetings in March, as I recall, and there's a vaccine conference in Washington in April that I'll be going to.
When you say Washington, do you mean Washington State or District of Columbia?
District of Columbia. In May, I'll be going back to France for the Advanced Vaccinology course. That's as much as I can remember at the moment.
Okay. There might be others, you just don't have your calendar here today, right?
Right.
Okay. And the NIH meetings, where are those taking place?
In Bethesda.
How far is that from here?
From here?
Yeah, do you drive there?
Oh, no, I take the train to Washington and then the metro to Bethesda.
Okay. How long does that trip take?
The train is an hour and a half. The metro is maybe 20 minutes.
What's the name of the plaintiff in this case?
Well, from what was said before, the plaintiff, I think, is someone named Schmidt. I've not followed, as I said before, I have not been involved in the legal details, so I don't know the names except from what I've heard.
What's the name of the defendant in this case?
As I understand it, they're a married couple, but that's all I can tell you, so I presume that they're both named Schmidt.
Okay. What's the name of their child?
I do not know.
Okay. How old is their child?
I do not know.
Do you know whether the child has received any vaccines?
I do not know.
The name of the child is Faith, and I'll refer to the child as Faith during this deposition, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Faith's father believes that Faith's mother was wrong to not have given Faith all CDC recommended vaccines on time. Do you agree with the father?
Yes.
Is it your understanding that the father wants Faith to receive all vaccines she has missed and continue to receive all CDC recommended vaccines?
That is my understanding, yes.
Do you agree with the father that Faith should receive these vaccines?
Absent any contraindication, yes.
Sitting here today, do you know whether Faith has any contraindications?
I do not know.
So sitting here today, you don't know whether Faith should or should not actually get these vaccines?
In the absence of a contraindication, Faith should receive the vaccines.
But you don't know whether she has a contraindication?
I do not know the medical history of the child.
What vaccines has Faith missed according to the CDC schedule that you believe she should get?
Well, the CDC's schedule includes diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, hepatitis B, Haemophilus influenza, polio, measles, mumps, rubella. I don't know how old she is, so I don't know, where to stop. But there are vaccines recommended in pre-adolescence, so she should receive those when she reaches the appropriate age.
So just so make sure I understand, you believe she should get the hepatitis B vaccine,
Yes,
rotavirus,
yes,
Dtap,
yes,
Hib,
Yes.
PCV13,
Yes.
IPV,
Yes.
the flu shot annually,
Yes.
IIV, we'll call it the flu shot.
At the moment, yes.
I'm sorry, at the moment.
At the moment.
What do you mean?
I mean that there are 2 influenza vaccines, one of which is recommended for this year. The other is not recommended at the moment, but may be in the future.
Okay. You think she should get the recommended one?
Yes.
And you think she should get the MMR, I believe you said,
Yes, and varicella.
and hepatitis A vaccine,
I'm sorry?
and the Hep A vaccine?
And the Hep A vaccine, yes.
Okay. How many doses of Hep B as a child do you recommend they receive?
3,
How many doses of rotavirus do you recommend?
2 or 3.
And you recommend Faith receive those, right?
Yes.
And you recommend that she receive the 3 doses of Hep B?
Yes.
And how many doses of Dtap do you recommend she receive?
Well, currently at least 3, then a booster, and eventually another booster.
And how many doses of HIV do you recommend she receive?
Well, 3 are usually sufficient.
Okay. And how many doses of PCV13?
3,
And how many doses of IPV or inactivated polio vaccine?
3.
How many doses of the flu shot?
Well, 1 per year.
And how many doses of MMR?
At least 2, yes.
How many doses of varicella?
2.
And Hep A?
2 or 3. 2 is often sufficient.
Okay, and those are the doses that you recommend that Faith receive, correct?
Yes.
Okay. For each of those vaccines we just went through?
Yes.
Okay.
And then there are the adolescent vaccines as well.
And what are those?
Well, meningococcus is often recommended, and also human papillomavirus vaccine, especially if she is a girl, but it's also recommended for boys as well.
And you recommend that Faith receive those as well, the meningococcus and HPV vaccine?
Yes.
Okay. Any others?
Well, I could look up the vaccine schedule if you wish me to, but I am sure that I agree with all of the CDC recommendations.
Okay. How about when she becomes an adult, would you recommend that she get all of the vaccines that are recommended by the CDC for adults?
Well, certainly, yes.
What are the, can you please tell me the brand name and manufacturer for each of the Hep B vaccines?
Oh. I do not try to memorize brand names. As I recall, Engerix is the most commonly used hepatitis B vaccine, which is manufactured by GlaxoSmithKline. There's also a vaccine manufactured by Merck. I don't remember the trade name at the moment. As I said, I don't try to memorize trade names.
Okay, so for the hepatitis B, there's a vaccine manufactured by GlaxoSmithKline. Can we refer to that either as Glaxo or GSK today?
Okay. Yes.
And there's one manufactured by Merck.
Correct.
Okay. Rotavirus, what are the brand names and companies that manufacture those?
Well, actually, one of the rotavirus vaccines I developed, so I do know that the trade name is called Rotatec, and the other one is called Rotarix.
Okay, and who manufactures those?
I'm sorry?
Who sells those, manufactures those?
Merck manufactures Rotatec, and GSK manufactures Rotarix.
Okay. How about Dtap? What are the brand names and manufacturers for Dtap?
Oh, boy. Sanofi Pasteur manufactures Dtap, and so does GSK. I do not remember the trade names.
How about the hepatitis B vaccine? Can you tell me what are the brand names for those products and the manufacturer?
For hepatitis B?
For HIB, I'm sorry.
For HIB.
I apologize. Did I say Hep B?
Uh,
I meant HIB. Which stands for what, by the way, Dr. Plotkin?
Haemophilus influenza type B.
Thank you.
Well, again, my recollection is that Sanofi and GSK, yes, both manufacture HIB.
Okay. And what about PCV13? What is the name of the product and the manufacturer of that vaccine?
I don't remember the trade name, but Pfizer is the manufacturer.
Okay. And what about the flu shot?
Oh, well, there are multiple manufacturers.
There are multiple manufacturers flu shot.
Yeah.
Let's, in terms of flu shots, let's strike that. We're going to come back to the flu shot. Make it simpler. Well, let me ask you this actually about the flu shot. What flu shots, are there any flu shots recommended for children under 1 year of age?
No, 6 months usually is the time at the age at which influenza vaccines are recommended for children.
Okay, and do you know who manufactures flu shots recommended for children under 1 year?
For children?
Yeah.
I don't remember which of the manufacturers. There are probably 10 different influenza vaccines, not all of which have been tested in children. So there are relatively few for children, all of them manufactured in chick embryo. But anyway, I don't. I'm sure that the major manufacturers like Sanofi and GSK certainly manufacture influenza vaccines. There's an Australian manufacturer, CSL.
But I mean, just for, I'm sorry, Dr. Plotkin, just for, by age group, let me make this simpler. Do you have a recollection of which flu shots are recommended for which age groups?
You mean which manufacturers?
Right.
No, I don't recollect.
Okay. In terms of the IPV, the inactivated polio vaccine, what is the product name manufacturer for that?
I don't remember the trade name, but Sanofi and GSK both make IPV.
Okay. And the MMR vaccine, what is the product name and manufacturer for that one?
Merck is the manufacturer. GSK also makes one, but Merck is pretty much the American manufacturer for MMR.
Okay. And for and for varicella, the product name and the manufacturer?
Well, Merck again manufactures varicella vaccine, and GSK also does.
And then for the hepatitis A vaccine, what are the product names and manufacturers?
Hepatitis A, GSK is the biggest manufacturer of hepatitis A.
Okay. Is there any? Got it. Okay. And then. How about the meningococcal vaccine? What's the product name and manufacturer for that one?
Meningococcal vaccines are manufactured the present time by Sanofi, by GSK, by Pfizer. Those are the three.
And how about the HPV vaccine manufacturer, the product name and manufacturer, please?
Merck and GSK both manufacture HPV vaccines.
Okay. So every vaccine that you believe Faith should receive is produced by either Merck, Sanofi, GSK, or Pfizer, correct?
Yeah, that's pretty much the case. In this country at the present time, there are a limited number of vaccine manufacturers because a vaccine manufacturer is difficult and costly.
Would it be correct to call these four companies the big four vaccine manufacturers?
Yes, that's correct. Johnson & Johnson is attempting to come into the field, but they are not yet one of the major manufacturers.
Have you received any payments from Sanofi or any of its related or predecessor entities?
Yes, certainly.
Okay. In what years did you receive payments?
Oh, jeez. Well, first of all, as you should know, in the 1990s, I was medical and scientific director of Sanofi Pasteur. So obviously I was paid by them. Since then, I've been consulting for manufacturers, for biotechs, for governments, for nonprofits, and essentially for anyone interested in vaccine development. And so I have been remunerated by companies, not by nonprofits, obviously, and that is essentially what I do.
Is there a year since 1990 that you've not received any kind of payment or remuneration from Sanofi?
Probably not, no.
How much did you receive? What would you say is the approximate total amount of payments and remunerations you've received from Sanofi during your lifetime?
Oh my God. I have no idea. I'm sure it's a sizable amount of money, but you'd have to ask my wife, who's essentially my accountant.
Mm-hmm. Is your wife the person that would have the records to know that amount?
Yeah, she probably would.
Okay. Would you say it's more or less than $100,000?
Oh, I'm sure it's more than that.
Would you say it's more or less than 500,000?
Probably, yes. I would, over the years, I imagine it is.
Would you say it's more or less than $1 million?
Well, again, I'm not prepared to answer this question, but I am sure it's a considerable amount of money, and over the years, it could well be more than $1 million.
Do you believe it could be a few million?
You know, Counselor, I cannot give you a precise figure. It is a considerable amount of money, I do not doubt. but I couldn't not give you a specific number because I've never looked at it.
Okay, well, I'm going to make a request for the documents to understand precisely how much you've received from Sanofi over the years.
I mean, you guys can do any discovery requests that you want. That he doesn't have it with him today, he can't produce it right now.
Your objection is noticed, Counselor. Thank you. Has any entity in which you directly or indirectly have a greater than 1% ownership interest received any payment from Sanofi or any of its related or predecessor entities?
Could you repeat that question?
Sure. Is any entity, do you understand what I mean by the term entity, Dr. Plotkin?
Are you talking about me personally, or?
When I say, I'm asking if you understand what the term entity means in that question.
No.
Okay, great. So when I use the term entity, I mean it to include any business, sole proprietorship, company, LLC, LLP, limited liability company, organization, and so forth. Is that clear what entity means?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm asking is any entity, so any business company that you've had, directly or indirectly, more than 1% ownership interest, okay? Has any company like that received money from Sanofi?
Well, again, I'm not sure I understand the question, but I am the principal of a company called Vax Consult,
Okay.
which essentially was organized to make things easier from the tax point of view. And that entity, if that's what you mean, has received payments from companies for whom I consult. So it's a device, if you will, to make things simpler for the accountant.
Okay. So who owns Vax Consult?
I do, or my wife and I do.
Okay. And what percent do you own?
100%.
Okay. And is there any other company, and payments have been made to Vax Consult by Sanofi?
Sure.
Okay. And what's the total amount of payments that have been made to Vax Consult by Sanofi?
Well, again, I do not have an exact number. I am sure that over the years it's a considerable amount, but I cannot tell you exactly how much.
Is there any other company in which you have an ownership interest that's received money from Sanofi?
No.
Okay. You anticipate to continue to receive payments or any kind of other remuneration from Sanofi in the future?
As long as my health holds out, yes.
Okay. And what are those payments for?
For advice.
Have you received any payments from Merck or any of its related or predecessor entities?
Yes.
Okay. And what year did you receive payments?
All I can say is since I stopped working for Sanofi, which was in early 2000s, I've consulted for essentially all of the major manufacturers. I do not know how much I received, but I certainly received payments from Merck, from Glaxo, from Pfizer, and many other entities.
So what was approximately the first year that you received payments from Merck?
Sometime in the 2000s.
Would you say that you've received more than $100,000 in payments remuneration from Merck since then?
I have no idea.
But you would have records that would be able to determine that amount, correct?
Yes, I doubt that it's 100,000, but I don't recall. As I said, my wife does the accounting, and I pay no attention to it.
Do you anticipate receiving any payments for remuneration from Merck in the future?
Sure.
You said that you've received payments and another remuneration from GSK in the past.
Yes.
Okay. When did those payments start?
Again, I cannot give you a precise year, but as I've tried to say repeatedly, since 2000, I've been consulting for many different entities, including GSK and the others.
Mm-hmm. Do you expect to continue to receive payments remuneration from GSK in the future?
Yes.
Okay. I'll ask you the same question about Pfizer. You indicated that you have received payments and remuneration from Pfizer.
Yes.
Do you remember when you first received any payments from them or any remuneration?
No, I don't recall what year that would be.
Okay. And do you have a sense of approximately how much you've received?
No.
Do you anticipate continuing to receive payments and remuneration from Pfizer?
Very likely.
Now, all of the payments that you've received from the big four vaccine manufacturers, as we've defined it, they were either made to you directly or through what was the name?
VaxConsult.
Or VaxConsult?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't we try this a little bit of a different way? Since it appears your memory of over longer periods of time is not as clear with regard to how much payment remuneration you received from the big four. Can you tell me what is the total amount of payments in dollars you received in 2017, last year, from anyone or any entity involved in the development or sale of vaccines?
Of what?
From any entity involved in the development or sale of vaccines.
Oh. My recollection is in the neighborhood of 200,000.
Sorry about that. The microphone wire got stuck. Let me just get this back on. Do you own any stock in Sanofi?
No.
Have you ever?
No.
Do you own any stock options in Sanofi?
No.
Have you ever?
No.
How about from Merck, Glaxo, or Pfizer? Do you own any stock in any of those companies?
No.
Any stock options?
No.
Okay. Has any educational or not-for-profit institution in which you have been involved received funding from Sanofi?
That's a very difficult question to answer. I don't inquire about the finances of the organizations that I work for or that I advise. So I find that question very, very difficult to answer. I imagine that some of them do, but I have no knowledge of the matter. Voices for Vaccines, for example, receives no funding from any of the pharmaceutical companies, and that is in order to avoid any suggestion of a conflict of interest. And I think that's probably true for a number of the nonprofits I advise, but obviously it may not be true for companies.
So you're saying Voices for Vaccines doesn't receive any funding from pharmaceutical companies?
None.
What's your affiliation with that group?
Well, I was one of those who suggested that an organization of lay people, as opposed to scientists, would be a good idea to oppose all of the nonsense that one sees on the web from anti-vaccination organizations.
So it was your idea to create Voices for Vaccines?
It wasn't my sole idea. It was a suggestion that I made at a certain point, and it turned out that there were lay people who were interested in promoting vaccines. Since then, I've been on their advisory board, but other than that, I have no role in the organization.
But you were, so from what I'm understanding, tell me if I'm correct, but it sounds like you were a driving force in suggesting its creation and at least initially
Yes.
getting it set up. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Going to hand you what has been marked as Plaintiff's Exhibit 1.
And Amy, is that coming to my email?
It will be in just one moment.
All right.
I don't care. The marked one? Yeah, that's fine. I'm going to hand you what's been marked as Plaintiff's Exhibit 1.
I have to email it to you.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's been sent. Hopefully it will come through.
I'm sure it will. Oh, it's going to be all day. Got it?
Okay, great. Dr. Plotkin, do you recognize this as a printout from the Voices for Vaccines website?
Well, that's what it says. I don't read the website that often, but yes.
Okay. And I see that it's got you listed on the Scientific Advisory Board on the
Yes.
3rd page, correct?
Yes.
Now you see at the very end on the last page, Dr. Plotkin, see at the very bottom it says Voices for Vaccines is an administrative project of the Task Force for Global Health.
Yes.
Okay. And it receives funding from that organization, correct?
No.
Okay.
Does not receive funding. The task force was asked to do the, what shall I say, the financial stuff required for an organization like Voices for Vaccines, but it does not contribute financially to Voices for Vaccines.
Dr. Plotkin, I'm going to hand you what's been marked as Exhibit 2. This is a Form 90 tax return for the Task Force for Global Health. Yeah. I'm just not going to ask him questions until you emailed it.
Just be mindful I am taking the exhibits at the end today.
So I've handed you what has been marked as Plaintiff's Exhibit 2. It is the tax return for the 990 tax return for the Task Force for Global Health. If you turn to the second page, do you see Section 4C?
Yes.
Where there's expenses of $3,757,924.
Yes.
Okay. Do you see that one of the groups receiving part of that funding was on the last line, Voices for Vaccines?
I don't see where it says
The last sentence in 4C.
Voices for Vaccines has expanded its educational outreach through new media and parenting networks, increasing its membership and its on-the-ground reach. So?
If you go up to number 4, Dr. Plotkin, can you read what the items in that list are supposed to be describing?
Expenses, including grants, revenues. So?
I'll read it to you. Number 4. Number 4 says, describe the organization's program service accomplishments for each of its 3 largest program services as measured by expenses.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you claiming that this document does not represent that Voices for Vaccines received funding from the Task Force for Global Health?
As far as I am aware, that the Voices for Vaccines receives no funding from the task force. The task force, under Dr. Alan Hinman, has agreed to do the financial, whatever is required by the government to do the financial work for Voices for Vaccines. But as far as I'm aware, it receives no funding from the task force or any other governmental or semi-governmental entity.
So the task force does provide some support for Voices for Vaccines, correct?
It does,
He
yes.
already answered. He said he doesn't know.
Your objection is noted, thank you. The Task Force for Global Health Does the Task Force for Global Health receive funding from any of the big four pharmaceutical companies?
I do not know